Monday morning at 8:12. My phone screamed like a fire alarm. It was a cold notification from an impound lot in South Carolina telling me my vehicle had been seized. My car, which was supposed to be locked in my Ohio garage, was sitting nearly 1,000 miles away with a flag for unauthorized use. That was the moment I realized they had not just borrowed my car for the weekend, they had hijacked my life. My name is Paisley Reed, and I am 36 years old. I have spent the last decade carefully constructing a life that operates with the precision of a Swiss watch, primarily because the life I was born into operated with the chaotic unpredictability of a brush fire. I was currently standing in a glass-walled conference room in Portland, Oregon, staring out at the gray, relentless rain that defines the Pacific Northwest. This was the week that would define the next 10 years of my career. I was the lead strategist for a merger that involved 9 figures, and I had spent 6 months preparing for the presentation that was scheduled to begin in exactly 45 minutes. My suit was tailored perfectly. My notes were memorized. My phone was set to silent, or at least, it should have been. At 8:12 in the morning, the device did not just vibrate against the mahogany table, it seemed to convulse. It was a long, sustained buzz that ignored the polite settings I usually maintained. I glanced down, expecting a crisis from the London office or perhaps a last-minute panic from my assistant. It was neither. The screen displayed a notification from a towing and impound service in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. The preview text was clinical, cold, and utterly impossible. Vehicle impounded, 2022, Audi Q7, license plate, OH592 LMP. Location, Ocean Boulevard, Myrtle Beach. SC, I froze. My hand hovered over the phone, my fingers perfectly manicured, trembling ever so slightly, not from fear, but from a sudden, violent recalibration of my reality. My car was supposed to be in Columbus, Ohio. It was supposed to be locked inside my detached garage, under a dust cover, with the battery tender attached. I had checked the lock myself before I took the Uber to the airport on Friday. I had seen the heavy cedar door slide shut. I had heard the latch engage. Columbus, Ohio, is roughly 700 miles from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I picked up the phone, apologized to the 2 junior associates in the room with a tight, practiced smile, and stepped out into the corridor. The hallway was quiet, lined with abstract art and smelling faintly of floor wax and ambition. I walked to the far end, near the emergency exit, and swiped the notification to open the full report. There was a photo, a grainy, low-light image taken by a tow truck driver. It was my car. There was no mistaking the custom darker tint on the rear windows or the specific rims I had upgraded to last year. It was hooked up to the back of a wrecker, looking dirty and defeated. I did not panic. That is the thing about growing up in a house where chaos is the baseline. You learn to bypass panic and go straight to assessment. Panic is a luxury for people who trust that things will work out. I knew better. I felt a coldness spread through my chest, a sensation like swallowing ice water. It was the feeling of a boundary not just being crossed, but being obliterated. I dialed the number listed on the digital invoice. The phone rang 4 times before a man picked up. His voice was thick, gravelly, and sounded like he had been awake for 3 days. Myrtle Beach impound. This is Davis, he said. This is Paisley Reed, I said. My voice was steady, dropping into the lower register I used when negotiating contracts. I received a notification that my vehicle, a black Audi Q7, is currently in your possession. Yeah, hold on, Davis said. I heard the clacking of a keyboard and the sound of a radio squawking in the background. Reed, right, we got it. Picked it up about 40 minutes ago, blocking a private driveway on North Ocean. Homeowner called it in, said it had been there since last night. I am in Oregon, I said. The car should be in Ohio. Well, it ain't in either of those places, lady. It is in my lot, Davis said, sounding bored. Look, we had a bit of a situation when we hooked it up. The cops are still here finishing the paperwork if you want to talk to them. There was a dispute. Put the officer on, I said. There was a shuffling sound, the muffled noise of a hand over the receiver, and then a new voice came on the line. This one was firmer, authoritative, but tinged with the exhaustion of a man who deals with tourists making bad decisions. "This is Officer Miller, Myrtle Beach Police Department," he said. "Are you the registered owner?" "I am, Paisley Reed," I said. "Officer, tell me exactly who was with the vehicle." Officer Miller sighed. "Ma'am, we have a male and female, late 60s maybe, and a younger female, early 30s, 2 minor children, looks like a boy and a girl, maybe 5 and 7 years old. They came running out of the rental unit when the tow truck started lifting the SUV. It got pretty heated. The older gentleman was trying to physically block the driver, claiming it was a family vehicle, and they just parked it wrong for a minute. The younger woman was crying, saying her sister, I assume that is you, would fix it." I closed my eyes. The visual was so clear it hurt. I could see my father, red-faced and blustering, using his volume to compensate for his lack of authority. I could see my mother, clutching her purse, looking around for someone to blame, and Taryn, my golden sister Taryn, crying. Of course, she was crying. That was her currency. "They claimed it was a misunderstanding," Officer Miller continued. "Said you lent them the car for a weekend trip, and they just got confused about the parking zones. Since the registration matches the last name on the older male's ID, Reed, we were treating it as a civil parking dispute. They are asking if they can pay the drop fee and take the car." I took a breath. This was the moment, the fork in the road. If I said yes, if I validated their lie, they would pay the fee, or more likely, charge it to a card they knew I would eventually pay off, and drive back to Ohio. They would spin a story about how I overreacted. They would laugh about the grumpy cop. They would leave hamburger wrappers and sand in my back seat. And on Monday night, they would drop the car off with an empty tank and a half-hearted apology. The boundary would be erased. The precedent would be set. "Officer Miller," I said, my voice cutting through the static of the line like a scalpel. "Listen to me very carefully. I am the sole owner of that vehicle. The title is in my name only. I am currently in Portland, Oregon, for business. I did not give those people permission to take my car. I explicitly told them the vehicle was not available for use. If they have the keys, they obtained them by entering my home without my consent and removing them from a secured location." The silence on the other end of the line was heavy. I could hear the shift in the atmosphere. The family squabble box was being unchecked, and the grand theft auto box was being considered. "You are stating that the vehicle is stolen, ma'am?" Officer Miller asked. His tone had lost the casual edge. He was reaching for a pen. "I am stating that I am the sole legal owner, and I have not authorized anyone to operate that vehicle," I said. "I do not want the vehicle released to them. Under no circumstances are you to hand the keys to my father, Thomas Reed, my mother, Lydia Reed, or my sister, Taryn Hughes. Do you understand?" "I understand," Miller said. "Okay, this changes things. We are going to have to impound the vehicle as evidence pending a formal report if you want to press this. That leaves the family stranded here." "That is not my concern," I said. It felt cold to say it, but I forced the words out. "However, officer, you mentioned children." "Yes, 2 kids. Those are my niece and nephew," I said, and for the first time, my voice wavered. Just a fraction. "They are innocent in this. Please ensure they are safe. If my family is being detained or if they cannot secure transport, please do not leave the children on the side of the road. Call Child Protective Services if you have to, or ensure my sister has a way to get them to a hotel, but do not release that car." "We will look out for the kids, ma'am," Miller said. "But your family, they are not going to be happy. The older man is already shouting about calling his lawyer." "Let him shout," I said. "He does not have a lawyer. He has a daughter he has exploited for 30 years, and she just resigned." "All right," Miller said. "I will instruct the tow yard to hold the vehicle under a police hold. Nobody touches it but you or your authorized proxy with a notarized release. I will file the initial incident report. You will need to contact the Columbus Police Department to file the theft report on your end to make it official across state lines. I will handle it immediately, I said. Officer? Yes. Check the mileage, I said. Please, log the exact mileage right now. Will do. I hung up. I stood there in the corridor for a long moment, staring at the abstract painting on the wall. It was a chaotic splash of red and black. It looked like anger. My hands were steady again. The trembling had stopped. The cold shock had been replaced by a simmering, focused heat. They had driven my car 900 miles. They had loaded my sister's children into a vehicle they had stolen, driven it across state lines, and parked it carelessly enough to get towed. They had looked at the boundary I set, the first hard, non-negotiable boundary I had set in years, and they had not just stepped over it. They had laughed at it. They thought I was thousands of miles away. They thought I was trapped in meetings. They thought I would never know until they were back. And by then, it would be too late to do anything but sigh and accept it. It's just a car. Paisley, don't be so dramatic. We did it for the kids. I looked at the time on my phone. 8:25 in the morning. I had 32 minutes before I had to walk into that boardroom and convince a room full of skeptical investors that my strategy was the only one that mattered. I straightened my blazer. I smoothed a stray hair back into my bun. I walked back toward the conference room door. My father used to tell me that family is the only thing that matters. He used to say that everything we have is shared. He used to say that I owed them for the roof they put over my head and the food they put in my stomach. As I reached for the door handle, a single thought crystallized in my mind, sharp and dangerous as a shard of glass. They did not just take the Audi. If they had just asked for money, I might have said no. But I would not have felt this. If they had crashed their own car and needed a ride, I would have helped. But they broke into my sanctuary. They violated the one space I had explicitly declared off-limits. They dragged my career, my liability, and my name onto the asphalt of a South Carolina tow yard. They stole my peace, and now I was going to take theirs. I opened the door and walked back into the room. The junior associate, Mark, looked up from his laptop. "Everything okay, Paisley?" he asked. "You look intense." "Everything is fine, Mark," I said. Sitting down and opening my leather-bound notebook, I picked up my pen. "I just had to clarify some ownership issues. Let's run the numbers on the slide deck one more time. I want to be absolutely sure we control the narrative today." I focused on the screen, but in the back of my mind, the clock was ticking. Not for the meeting, but for the fallout. I knew exactly what was happening in Myrtle Beach right now. I knew the screaming match that was erupting. I knew the frantic calls that would be flooding my phone in about 5 minutes. I reached out and turned my phone completely off. Let them scream at the voicemail. Let them explain to the police why they were driving a car reported as unauthorized use. Let them figure out how to get 4 people and luggage back to Ohio with no car and limited funds. The presentation went flawlessly. I was sharp, aggressive, and undeniably convincing. When the lead investor nodded at me, impressed by the sheer force of my logic, he had no idea that the adrenaline fueling my performance wasn't from business ambition. It was the fuel of a bridge burning, bright and hot, 900 miles away. When the meeting ended 3 hours later, I did not turn my phone back on immediately. I went to the hotel business center. I needed a bigger screen. I needed to see the full picture. I logged into my bank accounts. I logged into the toll road transponder account associated with the Audi. I logged into my home security cloud server. It was time to see exactly how they had done it, and it was time to calculate exactly what it was going to cost them, to understand why I felt zero guilt about leaving my family stranded in a South Carolina impound lot. You have to understand the architecture of my life in Columbus, Ohio. It was not a life I stumbled into. It was a fortress I had built, brick by brick, receipt by receipt. Over 15 years of relentless grinding, I owned a restored brick colonial in German Village, a neighborhood of cobblestone streets and manicured gardens. I paid the mortgage alone. I paid the property taxes alone. And yes, I paid for the Audi Q7 alone, sending a check for $1,200 every single month to the bank without missing a beat. In the economy of the Reed family, however, my success was not treated as an achievement. It was treated as a communal resource. I was not seen as a daughter or a sister. I was viewed as a soft bank, an institution that operated with zero interest rates and infinite forgiveness policies. For as long as I could remember, the dynamic had been set in stone. I was the reliable one. I was the one who did the homework, the one who remembered birthdays, the one who saved allowance money. And Taryn? Taryn was the golden chaos. My younger sister was vibrant, loud, and perpetually the victim of circumstances that were mysteriously never her fault. If I was the designated driver of the family, Taryn was the one throwing up in the back seat while my parents told me to drive smoother so I would not upset her stomach. It had only gotten worse as we aged. Taryn was now 33, but her maturity seemed to have arrested somewhere around 19. She had 2 beautiful children, a boy and a girl, whom I adored. But Taryn wore motherhood like a suit of armor. It was her ultimate defense against accountability. If she was late, it was the kids. If she was broke, it was the kids. If she needed my car because hers was making a funny noise again, it was for the safety of the kids. And my parents, Lydia and Tom, were her enablers in chief. They had a script they had been reciting since I was 12 years old. You are the oldest, Paisley. You are stronger. You can handle it. Or the classic hit. Family is about sharing. We do not count pennies with blood. They were right. We did not count pennies. We counted thousands of dollars. Over the last 5 years, I had quietly absorbed costs that would have bankrupted a smaller business. I paid the family cell phone plan because it is just easier if you handle the auto pay, Paisley, and we will Venmo you. The Venmo notifications rarely came. I covered the deductible when Taryn backed her sedan into a mailbox. I paid for the emergency dental work when my father broke a crown. I bought the school clothes for my niece and nephew every August because Taryn was always between checks during back-to-school season. I did it because I wanted to be good. I did it because the guilt was a heavy, suffocating blanket that my mother knew exactly how to wrap around my shoulders. But the resentment was building. It was a slow-acting poison, accumulating in my system until I was toxic with it. The breaking point, the crack in the dam that led directly to the events of this morning, happened 3 months ago. It was a Tuesday. Taryn had called me at work. Frantic. Her car had a flat tire, and she needed to get the kids to a doctor's appointment. It was an emergency. She said she was crying. Taryn was always crying. Against my better judgment. I told her she could take my Audi. I told her the code to the garage. I told her to drive straight to the doctor and straight back, and to lock the car. I came home that evening to find my car parked in the driveway. Not the garage. The gas tank, which I had left full, was hovering near empty. There was a smear of chocolate on the beige leather armrest that looked like it had been ground in with a thumb. But the worst part was the dashboard. The check engine light was glowing a steady, ominous orange. When I confronted Taryn, she shrugged. She said the light just came on, and she didn't think it was a big deal. She said she had taken the kids for ice cream after the doctor because they were brave, hence the gas and the chocolate. It is just a car, Paisley, she had said, rolling her eyes as she buckled her kids into her own vehicle, which mysteriously had a fixed tire by then. You have insurance. Stop acting like I wrecked it. My mother had chimed in during the Sunday dinner that followed. She was stressed. Paisley, she needed a win with the kids. You have that fancy warranty, right? Why are you making her feel bad when she is trying her best? I took the car to the dealership the next day. The mechanic showed me the underside of the vehicle. There were scrapes along the rocker panels and grass packed into the undercarriage. Someone had taken my luxury SUV off-roading, or at least driven it over a curb and through a field. The repair bill was $800 for a damaged sensor and an alignment. I paid it. I did not ask Taryn for the money because I knew she did not have it. But that afternoon, I went to the hardware store. I changed the code on my garage keypad. I bought a heavy-duty deadlock for the interior door leading from the garage to the house. I installed a camera system that pointed directly at the driveway, and another one inside the garage. And most importantly, I stopped leaving my spare key in the kitchen drawer. I bought a small, fireproof safe and bolted it to the floor of my master closet. The spare key went inside. The combination was known only to me. I decided then that no was going to be a complete sentence. I realized that my family viewed my boundaries not as lines in the sand, but as challenges to be overcome. They did not see my no as a refusal. They saw it as the start of a negotiation. So, leading up to this Portland trip, I was methodical. I was paranoid. On Friday afternoon, before I left for the airport, my mother had called. She used her sweet voice, the one that usually preceded a request for money or labor. "We were thinking," she said, "since you are going to be away for a whole week, it is a shame to let that big car just sit there. Taryn was hoping to take the kids on a little day trip, just for a change of scenery. Her car is acting up again." "No," I said. I was packing my blazer, folding it carefully to avoid wrinkles. "Paisley, come on," my mother said. "It is supposed to be beautiful weather. The kids would love the sunroof." "No," I said again, firmer this time. "Mom, listen to me. My car is not a community shuttle. Last time Taryn took it, it cost me $800 and a day at the mechanic. I need that car to be reliable. I am driving to client sites when I get back. It stays in the garage." "You are being incredibly selfish," she snapped, the sweetness evaporating instantly. "Holding a grudge over a little accident. Family helps family. Your father is going to be very disappointed that you are hoarding your success like this." "Dad can be disappointed," I said. "But he can be disappointed while driving his own truck. If Taryn wants to go on a trip, she can rent a car, or you can drive her. My answer is no. Do not ask me again." I hung up before she could guilt-trip me about my nephew's birthday or my niece's lack of vacation memories. I went downstairs to the garage. I checked the Audi. I checked the tires. I checked the mileage. 22,415 miles. I took a picture of the odometer with my phone, a habit I had developed recently. Then I did the final sweep. I checked the garage door. It was closed. I checked the keypad. The code was fresh, one I had never written down. I went back inside the house, locked the door to the garage, and then went upstairs to my closet. I checked the safe. It was locked. The spare key was inside. The main key was in my purse, ready to travel with me to Oregon. I ordered my Uber. As I rode to the airport, watching the orderly streets of Columbus blur past, I felt a sense of calm. I had done it. I had finally secured my perimeter. I had spoken clearly, and I had backed it up with physical security. I told myself that they would complain. I knew my mother would text me passive-aggressive remarks throughout the week. I knew Taryn would post something vague on social media about people who value things over people. But I believed, truly and naively, that the car was safe. I thought I had outsmarted them. I thought that logic and locks would be enough to stop the entitlement of 3 adults who felt the world owed them a living. I was arrogant. I forgot the one rule of the Reed family. If they cannot get in through the front door, they will not just knock harder. They will find a window you forgot you had. They will pick a lock you thought was unbreakable. Or in this case, they would exploit a vulnerability I had not even considered a possibility. I sat on the plane to Portland, drinking a ginger ale, feeling proud of myself for standing my ground. I had no idea that while I was cruising at 30,000 feet, my father was likely standing in my driveway, figuring out how to bypass my systems. I had no idea that my no had not ended the conversation. It had simply started a heist. They did not just borrow the car because they needed it. They took it because I said they couldn't. It was an act of defiance. It was a statement. They were proving that my ownership was an illusion, that my boundaries were suggestions, and that everything I had ultimately belonged to the collective. But as I sat in that conference room in Portland, staring at the impound notice, the backstory ceased to be a tragedy and started to look like evidence. Every unpaid bill, every guilt trip, every accident with my property, it was all leading to this. I wasn't just dealing with a stolen car. I was dealing with a decade of theft, culminating in this one, massive, interstate insult, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't going to pay the bill to make the problem go away. I was going to make sure the bill went to the people who ran up the tab. The Friday before I left for Portland was vibrant with the deceptive calm of a loaded mousetrap. I was in my bedroom, folding silk blouses and arranging them into my suitcase with the geometry of a Tetris grandmaster. The sun was streaming through the sheer curtains, casting long, peaceful shadows across the hardwood floor. It was 4 in the afternoon. My flight was scheduled for early the next morning, and I had purposely kept my itinerary vague when speaking to my family. Then, my phone rang. The screen flashed the photo I had assigned to my mother, a picture of her smiling at a Thanksgiving dinner 5 years ago, back before her smile started to look less like an expression of joy and more like a bill collector's greeting. I let it ring twice. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but I knew the protocol. If I did not answer, she would call back immediately. If I did not answer the second time, she would call my landline. If I ignored that, she would send my father over to check on me, claiming she was worried I had choked on a grape or fallen in the shower. It was not concern. It was surveillance. I slid the icon to answer and put the phone on speaker, setting it on the bed beside my open suitcase. "Hi, Mom," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Paisley, honey," she cooed. Her voice was dripping with a sugary viscosity that usually meant she had already promised someone something that belonged to me. "Are you all packed for your big trip? We are just so proud of you. Portland. That is such a long way to go." "I am packing now," I said. "What is up, Mom?" "Oh, nothing much. Just sitting here with your sister. Taryn is having such a hard week. The baby has been teething, and you know how Leo gets when he's cooped up inside. We were just saying how nice it would be to get them out of the city for a couple of days, just for a change of scenery, fresh air, vitamin D." I stopped folding a blazer. I knew exactly where the exit ramp on this highway was located. "That sounds like a good idea," I said carefully. "The weather is supposed to be decent." "Exactly," she said, the speed of her speech increasing. "So we were thinking, since your car is just going to be sitting in that dark garage all alone for a whole week, gathering dust, maybe we could just borrow it? Just for the weekend. Taryn's sedan is, well, you know, it shakes when she goes over 60, and I do not feel safe with the grandkids in it on the highway. Your Audi is so safe. It has all those airbags and the lane assist thing." There it was. The pivot from casual chat to entitlement was so smooth, it was almost impressive. "No," I said. The silence on the other end was brief, like a diver holding their breath before a plunge. "Excuse me?" Mom asked. The sugar was gone. I said no. "Mom," I repeated, walking over to the phone. "I am not comfortable with anyone driving my car while I'm out of the state. It is not just sitting there gathering dust. It is secured. I have liability concerns. And frankly, after what happened last time, I'm not willing to risk it." "Paisley," she sighed, the sound heavy with performed exhaustion. "Do not bring that up again. That was months ago. Taryn said she was sorry. You are holding on to a grudge like a dog with a bone. It is ugly." "It was $800, I said, "and nobody paid me back. The answer is no. If Taryn wants to take the kids on a trip, you guys can take Dad's truck or rent a van. My car stays in the garage." "You are being incredibly selfish," she snapped. "You have this massive luxury vehicle that you barely use to its full potential, and you are denying your niece and nephew a safe ride? Do you know how much Taryn struggles? She barely sleeps. She is trying to give those kids a nice memory. And you are worried about, what? A little wear and tear? You are their aunt. Paisley, you are supposed to help." "I do help," I said, my temperature rising. "I help constantly, but my car is a boundary. I need it for work the second I get back. I cannot risk coming home to a check engine light or a dent because someone parked by feel. Give me the phone, Lydia." The voice changed. It was my father. He must have been listening on the other side of the kitchen island. His voice was lower, rougher, and carried the specific weight of a man who believed his authority was divine law. "Paisley," he barked, "stop this nonsense. Your mother is upset. I'm not trying to upset her. Dad, I am stating a fact. The car is not available. Let me tell you something about facts, he said. The fact is that you are where you are because of this family. We sacrificed everything for you. We paid for your college tuition. We co-signed your first apartment. We put food in your mouth for 18 years. You think you made yourself? You think that fancy job and that German car just fell out of the sky? You stand on our shoulders, young lady. I paid off my student loans 10 years ago. Dad, I said, gripping the edge of my dresser. I bought this house myself. I bought this car myself. You co-signed an apartment in 2008, and I was off the lease a year later. Do not pretend like you own me. We are a family, he said, ignoring my timeline. In this family, we share. We do not count pennies. We do not hoard resources when someone is in need. Your sister needs a reliable vehicle to take the kids to the coast. You are not using it. It is basic logic. Do not be greedy. It does not suit you. It is not greed, I said, my voice shaking slightly. Not from fear, but from the sheer effort of holding back a scream. It is property rights. It is my name on the title. If you want to talk about logic, here is the logic. I am the owner, and I am denying permission. That is the end of the discussion. You have changed, he said, his voice dropping to a disappointed growl. You have become cold. I do not know who taught you to treat family like business partners, but I do not like it. We are coming over later to pick up the spare key. Do not make this difficult. I will not be there, I lied. And do not come over. I mean it. Dad, if anyone touches that car, if I see it move on my security cameras, I will report it. You would call the police on your own father? He challenged. Is that who you are now? Do not test me, I said. Just leave the car alone. I hung up. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I hated this. I hated that a simple conversation about a weekend trip had to turn into a referendum on my moral character and a history lesson on my upbringing. They knew exactly which buttons to push, because they had installed them. I sat on the edge of the bed and took 3 deep breaths. Inhale for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. My phone buzzed. It was a text message. It was from Taryn. First, a photo appeared. It was a selfie of her and the 2 kids. They were sitting on her living room floor. My 5-year-old niece had big, watery eyes, and my 7-year-old nephew was holding a plastic beach bucket. Taryn looked exhausted, her hair in a messy bun, no makeup, looking directly into the lens with a pleading expression. Then came the text. Please don't be mad at Mom and Dad. They just want to help me. I promised the kids we'd go to the beach this weekend and my car is making that grinding noise again. I'm scared to drive it on the highway. I don't want to cancel on them. Look at these faces. Just for 2 days? I swear I'll vacuum it before I bring it back. Love you. Sis, it was a masterclass in manipulation. The visual aid, the deflection of blame. Don't be mad at Mom and Dad. The safety card. Scared to drive. The emotional hook. Look at these faces. I stared at the screen. A part of me. The part that had been trained to be the good big sister since I was 6 years old. Wanted to cave. It would be so easy. Just text back a code. Just say fine. Just buy the piece. But then I remembered the last time. I remembered the mud on the floor mats. I remembered the empty gas tank. I remembered the way Taryn had shrugged, completely unbothered by the inconvenience she had caused me, because she knew I would absorb it. I typed back, I love the kids. Taryn, but I cannot do it. The answer is no. Please do not ask again. I saw the 3 little dots appear as she started to type a reply. Then they disappeared. She didn't respond. That was almost worse. I finished packing in a fugue state. I zipped my suitcase shut and carried it downstairs. I checked the time. It was 5:30. I went into the garage. I walked around the Audi Q7. It was gleaming under the fluorescent lights. I checked the doors. They were locked. I checked the connection to the trickle charger I sometimes used, though I decided to disconnect it this time to make the car seem less ready. I went to the wall keypad for the garage door opener. I pressed the reset button and entered a new code. I did not write it down. I memorized it. 4913. Then, I went to the interior door that connected the garage to the kitchen. I turned the deadbolt. Then I engaged the secondary slide lock I had installed at the top of the frame, well out of reach of children or casual tampering. Finally, I went back upstairs to my closet. I opened the floor safe. I took the spare key fob out of its velvet pouch. I looked at it. Usually, I left it here. But my father's voice was still ringing in my ears. "We are coming over later to pick up the spare key." He assumed he knew where it was. He assumed he could just walk into my house. He still had a key to the front door for emergencies, and take what he felt he was owed. I put the spare key in my purse. I was taking both sets to Portland. I felt a surge of triumph. I had outflanked them. I had secured the asset. There was no physical way for them to take the car without hot wiring it, and my father was a retired insurance adjuster, not a grand theft auto specialist. I left for the airport at 4 a.m. on Saturday. The house was dark and quiet. The garage was a fortress. As the Uber driver pulled away, I checked my security app one last time. The camera feed showed the driveway. Empty, dark, silent. The garage interior camera showed the Audi sitting there, safe and sound. I landed in Portland 6 hours later. I turned my phone off airplane mode, bracing myself for a barrage of angry texts. I expected a wall of guilt. I expected long paragraphs from my mother about how I had ruined the weekend. I expected passive-aggressive links to bus schedules from Taryn. There was nothing. No texts, no missed calls, no voicemails. I checked my email. Nothing. Saturday passed. I went to a preliminary dinner with my legal team. I checked my phone under the table. Still nothing. Sunday came. I spent the day prepping for the big presentation. I sat in my hotel room, reviewing spreadsheets. Every few hours, I would glance at my phone. The silence was absolute. It was unnerving. The Reed family was not known for its silence. We were a family of noise, of confrontation, of immediate expression of grievance. If they were angry, they usually screamed. If they were hurt, they wailed. Why were they quiet? Maybe they had accepted it? Maybe. For the first time in history, my father had respected a boundary. Maybe Taryn had rented a car and they were at the beach, having a lovely time, and they had realized they didn't need me after all. I wanted to believe that. I really did. I wanted to believe that this was a breakthrough, a turning point where they learned to function without using me as a crutch. But as Sunday evening deepened into night, and the rain started to lash against the hotel window, a different feeling settled in my stomach. It wasn't relief. It was dread. I knew this silence. It wasn't the silence of acceptance. It was the silence of a heist in progress. It was the silence of children who are doing something they know is wrong, and they are being very, very quiet so they don't get caught until it is too late. I opened my security app again. The cameras were offline. "Connection error," the screen said. "Unable to reach base station." I frowned. It happens sometimes. My home internet could be spotty during storms. I checked the weather in Columbus. It was clear and 50 degrees. I tried to reboot the system remotely. Device not found. I told myself it was a power outage. I told myself a breaker had tripped. I told myself not to be paranoid. I went to sleep on Sunday night with a heavy feeling in my chest, the kind that wakes you up at 3 a.m. And then came Monday morning, and the call from Myrtle Beach. The silence of the weekend made perfect sense now. They hadn't called me to complain because they didn't need to complain. They hadn't texted me to beg because they had already taken what they wanted. They had been quiet because they were busy driving south, laughing at how clever they were, confident that they would have the car back and the cameras reset before I ever touched down in Ohio. They thought they had committed the perfect crime. They thought the only thing I would ever notice was a few extra miles on the odometer. They were wrong. They had made one critical error. They assumed the world worked like our family. Chaotic, forgiving, and without consequences. They forgot that out in the real world, when you take a car that isn't yours, it isn't a family dispute, it is a felony. And when you park illegally in a stranger's driveway, they don't call your mom to complain. They call a tow truck. The silence that had haunted me all weekend shattered at exactly 9 o'clock on Monday morning. It did not break with a scream, but with a digital deluge. I was sitting in the hotel business center, a sterile room with aggressive air conditioning and ergonomic chairs that were not actually comfortable, staring at my laptop screen. My phone, which I had finally turned back on, began to vibrate against the desk surface. It was not a single notification, it was a cascade. First came the toll road alerts. My EasyPass account, which was linked to my primary email, decided to vomit up 48 hours of suppressed data all at once. West Virginia Turnpike, Toll Plaza C, Saturday, 10:14 in the morning, East River Mountain Tunnel, Saturday, 12:30 in the afternoon, I-77 Express Lanes, North Carolina, Saturday, 3:45 in the afternoon. I watched the timestamps scroll down the screen like the credits of a horror movie. They had not just taken the car for a local spin, they had driven it straight out of the state. They had put hundreds of miles on the engine before I had even landed in Portland. Then came the credit card alert. I had a backup credit card tucked into the hidden compartment of the center console, strictly for emergencies. A blown tire in the middle of nowhere, a tow truck in a dead zone. I had forgotten to remove it. They had found it. Transaction approved. Shell station. Santee, South Carolina. Sunday, 9:15 in the morning. $52.40. Transaction approved. Buc-ee's, Florence, South Carolina. Sunday, 11:20 in the morning. $86.15. They were financing their heist with my own money. They were buying road trip snacks and filling my tank using my credit line, all while I was prepping to present merger strategies. I opened the Audi Connect app on my laptop. The connection error from last night had cleared. The car was back on the grid, likely because the police had started the engine or moved it to a spot with better reception. I clicked on the valet alert history. A red line slashed across the map of the eastern United States. It looked like an arterial bleed. It started in my driveway in Columbus, snaked down through the mountains of West Virginia, cut through the heart of North Carolina, and terminated at the coast. The final GPS pin was pulsing in a tow yard in Myrtle Beach. I picked up the phone and dialed Officer Miller's direct line. I needed context. The data told me where they were, but I needed to know how they had ended up in a tow yard. Miller picked up on the second ring. The background noise was louder this time. Sirens, shouting, the chaotic symphony of a police station on a Monday morning. "This is Reed," I said. "I have the tracking data. Tell me why my car was impounded." "Ms. Reed," Miller said. His voice was tighter than before. "We have had a development, but first, let me fill you in on the initial tow." I pulled the report from the private contractor. "Go ahead," I said, opening a new document on my laptop to take notes. "Your family parked the vehicle in front of a private residence on North Ocean Boulevard. It is a high-end area. The homeowner needed to leave for a medical appointment and was blocked in. He honked. He waited. He asked neighbors. Nobody moved the car. He was blocked in for 3 hours. I closed my eyes and pinched the bridge of my nose. 3 hours. They had parked my car across someone's driveway and then wandered off to the beach, oblivious to the existence of other human beings. The homeowner called the towing company. Miller continued. When the truck arrived, your family came running up from the beach. According to the driver, your father was extremely aggressive. He refused to move the car, claiming he had squatter's rights to the spot because there was no yellow curb, even though it was clearly a driveway. When the driver hooked the car up, your father refused to sign the release form. He said, and I am quoting from the report here, "Take it if you want. My daughter is a lawyer. She will own your company by Tuesday." "I am not a lawyer," I said, my voice flat. "And I do not own a towing company." "Figured as much," Miller said. "So, they refused to sign. They refused to pay the drop fee, which would have been $75 on the spot. They just grabbed their beach bags and walked away. The driver took the car. That was yesterday evening. Okay, I said. So they abandoned the vehicle because they were too proud to pay $75. That tracks. But you said there was a development. Yes, Miller said. About 20 minutes ago, right after we spoke the first time, the tow yard called us back. Your family returned to the lot. To pay the fee? I asked. No, Miller said. To take the car. I stopped typing. I told you to put a hold on it. We did, Miller said. But they did not go to the front desk. The yard is fenced, but the gate was open for a truck coming in. Your sister, Taryn Hughes, walked into the lot. She located your vehicle in the holding area, and then she unlocked it, started the engine, and attempted to drive it out the exit gate. The room seemed to tilt. She unlocked it? How? I have the keys. Both sets are in my purse right now. She had a key. Ms. Reed, Miller said. A gray valet key. The kind that usually sits in the glove box manual. The valet key, the plastic emergency key that comes with the owner's manual. I had completely forgotten it existed. It had been sitting in the leather pouch in the glove compartment since the day I bought the car. They had searched the car. They had found it, and they had kept it, probably months ago, waiting for a moment just like this. She tried to run the gate, Miller said. The lot owner blocked the exit with his own truck. She was ramming the bumper of your Audi into the back of a flatbed trying to push past. That is when we arrived. My stomach turned, not because of the damage, metal could be fixed, but because of the desperation. Taryn was not a criminal mastermind. She was a suburban mother who panicked when things did not go her way. She was trying to run because she knew I had found out. She was trying to race the car back to Ohio, maybe thinking she could get it into the garage and pretend none of this happened before I got home. Where are they now? I asked. We have them stopped on the access road just outside the impound lot, Miller said. My officers have the vehicle surrounded. Your father is screaming about kidnapping. Your mother is claiming chest pains. Your sister is locked inside the vehicle with the 2 children, refusing to come out. The children are in the car? I asked, a sharp spike of fear piercing through my anger. Yes, both kids are in the back seat. That is why we haven't broken the window yet. We are trying to talk her out. I looked at the clock. It was 9:15. My flight home was not until 6 in the evening. I was thousands of miles away, powerless to physically intervene, but I held the ultimate weapon in my hand. Officer Miller, I said, I am going to say this clearly. I want you to treat this exactly as you would if I were a stranger. If a stranger stole a car, drove it across state lines, and then tried to ram a gate to escape police custody, what would you do? We would arrest them for grand theft auto, reckless endangerment, and flight to avoid, Miller said. Do it, I said. And the kids? Miller asked. If we take the adults in, the kids go to Child Protective Services until a guardian can claim them. That means foster care. Ms. Reed, even if it is just for a night. I hesitated. This was the leverage they always used. The children, the innocent shields. If I punished Taryn, I punished the kids. That was how they had kept me in line for years. Do it for the kids. But I looked at the GPS track on my screen. I looked at the red line that represented their total disregard for my life, my property, and my safety. Taryn was currently sitting in a stolen car, using her children as hostages in a standoff with the police because she didn't want to face her big sister. I am the guardian, I said. I am their aunt, but I am in Oregon. I cannot get there for at least 8 hours. We have a temporary shelter, Miller suggested. Or if you have a friend in the area? I thought about it. I did not have friends in Myrtle Beach, but I had money, and I had a network. Officer, I am going to authorize you to remove the children from the vehicle, I said. Do not let them see their mother in handcuffs if you can avoid it, but get them out. I am going to contact a private security firm I have used for work. They have a branch in Charleston. I will pay for an agent to come and take custody of the children and transport them to a hotel where I will meet them tonight. I will send you the authorization paperwork within the hour. You are going to hire a bodyguard for the kids? Miller asked. sounding surprised. I am going to hire a professional to ensure my niece and nephew are safe while their mother is processed for a felony, I said, because clearly, their family is not capable of doing it. Understood, Miller said. And the adults? You want to press charges? Once we file this, the district attorney takes over. You cannot just drop it tomorrow because you feel bad. I know how the law works, I said. My sister stole my car. My father aided and abetted. They endangered those children by fleeing a police scene. File the report. Press the charges. I want a full paper trail. Copy that, Miller said. Stand by. I am going to approach the vehicle now. I did not hang up. I listened. I heard the muffled sound of Miller's voice shouting commands. Driver, roll down the window. Turn off the vehicle. I heard Taryn screaming. It was a high, thin sound, like a tea kettle boiling over. It is my sister's car. She said I could take it. Call her. She will tell you. I am on the phone with her right now. Ma'am, Miller shouted back. She says you stole it. There was a pause, a heavy, suffocating silence. Then I heard the click of the door unlocking. Step out of the vehicle, Miller commanded. I heard the shuffling of movement. I heard my father yelling in the background. Something about suing the department. I heard my mother sobbing, the theatrical wail she used at funerals of people she hardly knew. And then I heard my nephew. He was crying. Mommy? Where are we going? That sound almost broke me. It was the sound of innocence colliding with the hard, jagged reality of adult selfishness. I wanted to tell Miller to stop. I wanted to say, just let them go. I wanted to pay the fine and let them drive home and pretend this was just another chaotic Reed family vacation. But then I looked at the toll logs again. I looked at the timestamps. They had planned this. They had calculated exactly how long I would be gone. They had found the valet key and kept it secret. They had looked at my boundaries and laughed. If I saved them now, my nephew would learn that rules do not matter. He would learn that you can take what you want, lie about it, and someone will always bail you out. I was not going to teach him that lesson. Ms. Reed? Miller came back on the line. We have them in custody. The kids are in my cruiser. They are safe. We are waiting on your transport. Thank you, I said. I am sending the paperwork now. I hung up the phone. My hands were shaking again, but not from shock. It was the adrenaline of execution. I looked at my calendar. I had a debrief lunch with the partners at 12. I had a flight at 6. I opened my email and composed a message to my assistant. Subject: Urgent personal matter. Legal referral needed. Body: Sarah. I need the contact info for the best criminal defense attorney in South Carolina. Not for me. I need to forward it to a third party. Also, please book a suite at the Marriott in Myrtle Beach for tonight. I will be diverting my flight. I hit send. Then I opened a new file on my computer. I named it Reed Family Audit. I started typing a list. Item 1. Audi Q7. Unauthorized use. Damage assessment pending. Item 2. Easy Pass account. Unauthorized charges. Item 3. Chase Sapphire Reserve. Unauthorized transaction. Shell. Item 4. Chase Sapphire Reserve. Unauthorized transaction. Buc-ee's. Item 5. Garage security system. Breach method. Valet key theft. I stared at the list. It was clinical. It was cold. It was necessary. I was done being the daughter. I was done being the sister. Those roles had been compromised. From this moment forward, I was the plaintiff. I stood up, walked to the window, and looked out at the rain falling on Portland. I felt a strange sense of clarity. For 36 years, I had been trying to buy their love with my compliance. I had thought that if I was just good enough, generous enough, and forgiving enough, they would eventually respect me. I was wrong. You cannot buy respect from people who feel entitled to your existence. You can only command it, and nothing commands respect quite like a felony indictment. I packed my laptop. I put on my coat. I walked out of the business center and headed toward the elevator. I had a lunch to attend. I had to smile and shake hands and talk about mergers and acquisitions. I would do it perfectly. And then, I would fly to South Carolina and watch my family explain to a judge why they thought my life was their souvenir shop. I flew back to Ohio 36 hours earlier than my original itinerary stated. I did not go to the office. I did not go to my parents' house, though my phone showed 14 missed calls from my mother and a voicemail from my father that was 3 minutes long. I did not even go to my own home to drop off my suitcase. I took a cab from John Glenn Columbus International Airport directly to a specialized vehicle transport depot on the industrial outskirts of the city. I had arranged for the Audi to be shipped back on a flatbed. I could not bring myself to drive it back from South Carolina. The idea of sitting in that driver's seat for 10 hours, surrounded by the physical evidence of their betrayal, felt impossible. I needed the car to be returned to me on my terms, in my territory, stripped of the chaotic energy of the roadside arrest in Myrtle Beach. The transport depot was a bleak expanse of cracked concrete and chain-link fencing, smelling of diesel fumes and cold, damp asphalt. The sky above Columbus was a flat, bruised gray, a stark contrast to the sunny coastal weather my family had stolen for themselves. I walked into the small, prefabricated office. The air inside was stale, smelling of old coffee and photocopier toner. The man behind the counter, a guy named Rick with grease under his fingernails and a weary expression, looked up from a clipboard. "Pick up for Reed?" he asked, not making eye contact. "Yes," I said. "The black Q7. "Right. It got in about an hour ago. Driver said it was a police release. We had to pay the impound lot down south to get it out, plus the transport fee, plus the expedited service charge you requested." He tapped a few keys on a keyboard that looked like it had survived a war. "Total comes to $2,482.50. It was an obscene amount of money. It was enough to pay a mortgage payment. It was enough to buy a decent used car a decade ago. For most people, this number would be a crisis. It would be a reason to scream, to cry, to call a relative for a loan." I did not blink. I did not sigh. I simply reached into my purse, pulled out my platinum card, and slid it across the scratched countertop. "Receipt, please," I said. Rick looked at me then. He seemed surprised by my lack of reaction. He ran the card, the machine whirring and spitting out a slip of paper. I signed it with a steady hand. I folded the receipt carefully, aligning the edges, and placed it in my wallet next to the impound notice I had printed out in Portland. I was not paying a bill. I was buying evidence. "Keys are in the car," Rick said, handing me a gate pass. "Row 4, spot 12. It is the one that looks like it had a rough weekend." I walked out into the yard. The wind was biting, whipping my trench coat around my legs. But I hardly felt the cold. I navigated through rows of sedans and trucks until I saw it. From 20 feet away, it still looked like my car. It was sleek, black, and imposing. But as I got closer, the illusion fractured. The first thing I noticed was the mud. Thick, caked reddish clay was splattered across the wheel wells and the rocker panels. This was not road grime from a highway. This was dirt from an unpaved lot or a roadside shoulder where someone had parked carelessly. I reached for the door handle. I paused for a second, a wave of nausea rolling through me. This was my sanctuary. This was the one space in the world where I controlled the climate, the noise, and the direction. Now, I felt like I was about to walk into a house that had been burglarized. I pulled the handle. The smell hit me before I even sat down. It was a cloying, humid mixture that assaulted my senses. It smelled of artificial coconut from cheap sunscreen. It smelled of stale French fries and ketchup. It smelled of damp towels that had been left in a pile too long. And underneath it all, that distinct sour scent of spilled apple juice that has started to ferment in the heat. It did not smell like a luxury vehicle anymore. It smelled like a locker room. I sat in the driver's seat and closed the door. Sealing myself in with the odor, I gripped the steering wheel. It was sticky. My fingers adhered slightly to the leather at the 10 and 2 positions. I looked down. There was a smear of something brown. Chocolate? Barbecue sauce? Dried onto the stitching of the leather wrap. I turned around to look at the back seat. My heart didn't break. It hardened. It calcified. The back of my car, my pristine, leather-upholstered back seat where I rarely allowed anyone to sit, looked like a disaster zone. There were goldfish crackers ground into the floor mats, pulverized into orange dust that was embedded in the fibers. There was a juice box wedged between the seat cushions, empty and crumpled. A sticky purple stain, likely from a sports drink, ran down the back of the passenger seat in a long, dried rivet. It wasn't that the children had been messy. Children are messy. I knew that. I loved my niece and nephew. If I had taken them on a trip, I would have expected crumbs. But this was not just a mess. This was negligence. This was the debris of people who did not care because they did not have to clean it up. They had thrown wrappers on the floor because they assumed Paisley would pay for the detailer. They had let the kids wear muddy shoes on the leather because Paisley had seat covers somewhere, right? I reached over to the passenger seat floorboard. There was a fast food bag there, greasy and translucent at the bottom. I picked it up. It felt heavy. Inside were half-eaten burger wrappers and a handful of cold, hard fries. They hadn't even thrown away their trash before they abandoned the car to the tow truck. I got out of the car. I needed air. I walked around to the passenger side, my eyes scanning the bodywork like a forensic investigator. I found it on the rear passenger door. It was a scratch, about 4 inches long. It wasn't deep enough to expose the metal, but it had cut through the clear coat and the paint, leaving a jagged white scar against the black finish. It looked like the result of a door being swung open too wide and hitting a concrete pillar or another car. I ran my finger over it. It was rough. They hadn't told me. In all the screaming on the phone, in the guilt trips about the impound, nobody had mentioned. Oh, by the way, we scratched the door. They were going to let me find it weeks later. They were going to let me wonder if I had done it myself in a parking lot, or if I confronted them. They would have said, "It was probably already there. Paisley, you are just looking for things to be mad about." I continued my inspection. On the rear bumper, right near the trunk latch, there was a scuff mark. Matte gray paint transfer. Someone had dragged a heavy suitcase or a cooler over the lip of the bumper without lifting it properly. I walked back to the driver's side and opened the door again. I opened the glove compartment. I was looking for my registration, checking to see if they had lost that too. The registration was there, crumpled under a pile of napkins, but underneath it, shoved to the back of the compartment, was a fistful of paper receipts. I pulled them out and smoothed them against the dashboard. The narrative my mother had spun on the phone was one of a humble, desperate family needing a break. Poor Taryn. She just wants to take the kids to the beach, a little fresh air. The receipts told a different story. The Ocean Club. Valet parking. $40. The Ocean Club. Dinner. $312. Seaside Resort Spa. Day Pass Cabana Rental. $250. I stared at the numbers. These were not the expenditures of a struggling single mother trying to give her kids a budget-friendly weekend. These were the expenses of someone playing pretend. Taryn had taken my car not just for transportation, but as a prop. She had pulled up to the valet at a high-end steakhouse in a $70,000 SUV, tossed the keys to the attendant, and walked in like she owned the place. She had rented a cabana she couldn't afford, and she had paid for it all. Presumably, with money she borrowed from my parents, or perhaps put on a credit card she had no intention of paying off until the collection calls started. A receipt for the VIP beach access caught my eye. It was dated Saturday. That was the day I was in meetings. Worrying about my presentation, while I was working to build my future, they were burning cash to simulate a lifestyle they felt entitled to, using my vehicle as the anchor for their delusion. I felt a strange sensation in my chest. I waited for the tears. I waited for the familiar sting of hurt feelings. The "why don't they respect me" sadness that usually accompanied these incidents, but the tears did not come. My eyes were dry. My breathing was steady. Instead of sadness, I felt a sudden, sharp clarity. It was like a fever breaking. For years, I had told myself that they were just bad with money or unlucky. I had told myself that their chaotic lives were a result of circumstances, but looking at the sticky steering wheel, the scratched paint, and the receipt for a $40 valet charge. I realized the truth. They were not unlucky. They were parasitic. They did not borrow my car. They consumed it. They consumed my stability to fuel their fantasy. They looked at my life, my discipline, my savings, my assets, not as something to be proud of, but as a reservoir for them to drain whenever their own wells ran dry. I gathered the receipts. I did not throw them away. I put them in my purse, inside a zippered pocket. I started the engine. The dashboard lit up. The fuel gauge was on reserve. Of course it was. They had driven it until the fumes ran out and then left it for me. I pulled out of the transport lot. The suspension felt stiff, or maybe that was just me. I drove through the gray streets of Columbus. I did not turn on the radio. I needed the silence. I navigated the familiar route toward German Village. Usually, when I returned from a trip, my first instinct was to call my mother to let her know I was safe. It was a habit ingrained in me since childhood. Call when you land. Call when you get home. My hand twitched toward the phone, and then stopped. I was not going to call. I was not going to check in. I was not going to give them the satisfaction of knowing I was back, or that I had the car. I drove past the exit from my parents' neighborhood. I didn't even tap the brakes. I pulled into the alley behind my house. I approached my garage. I used the remote to open the door. I pulled the Audi inside. The garage was clean, quiet, and smelled of cedar and concrete. It was my space. I turned off the engine. I sat there for a moment in the dark, listening to the ticking of the cooling metal. I got out. I did not unload my suitcase. I did not take the trash out of the car. I left the burger wrappers, the crumbs, and the sticky residue exactly where they were. I needed to document them first. I needed photos. High resolution, well-lit photos of every single inch of the mess. But first, I needed to work. I walked into my house. It was cold. The thermostat had been set to eco mode while I was away. I didn't bother to turn it up. The chill felt appropriate. I walked into my home office and sat down at my desk. I opened my laptop. The screen glowed, a blue square of light in the dim room. I opened the file I had started in Portland. Read Family Audit. I looked at the cursor blinking at me. It was waiting for input. I began to type. I typed with a speed and ferocity that I usually reserved for crisis management at work. I created a new section header: Physical Damages and Restoration Costs. Under that, I started a list: Professional Interior Detailing, Biohazard Deep Clean Level, Paint Correction and Scratch Repair, Rear Passenger Door, Bumper Resurfacing, Leather Reconditioning, Steering Wheel Seats, Fuel Reimbursement, Full Tank, Depreciation Adjustment for Unauthorized Mileage, 940 miles. I stopped typing and looked at the total I was estimating in my head. It was thousands of dollars. But it wasn't about the money anymore. The money was just the language I had to speak, because it was the only language they understood. I created another tab in the spreadsheet. I labeled it Historical Review. I was going to go back. I was going to go back through 5 years of bank statements, every loan, every shared dinner I paid for, every time I covered a bill because Dad's check is late, every birthday gift that was suspiciously expensive for people who claimed to be broke. I was going to build a ledger, a complete, irrefutable accounting of exactly what the Reed family had cost me. I leaned back in my chair. The house was silent. For the first time in my life, the silence didn't feel lonely. It felt powerful. I was not a daughter anymore. I was an auditor, and the audit was just beginning. I drove to my parents' house at 7 o'clock that evening. I did not take the Audi. I left it in my garage, still caked in South Carolina mud, still smelling of the violation it had endured. I took an Uber. I wanted to arrive without the object of their obsession. I wanted them to look at me, not the keys in my hand. The house in the suburbs looked exactly the same as it always did. The lawn was manicured, the porch light was on, and the flower baskets my mother tended to with performative zeal were blooming. It was the picture of a perfect, middle-class American family. It was a facade that I had helped pay to maintain for the better part of a decade. I walked up the driveway. I did not use my key. I rang the doorbell. It was a small gesture, but it was significant. It signaled that I was no longer a resident, not even in spirit. I was a visitor, and I was not a friendly one. My mother opened the door. She looked haggard. Her eyes were rimmed with red, and she was wearing a silk robe that she usually reserved for days when she had a migraine. She didn't say hello. She didn't ask if I had eaten. She didn't ask how my flight was. She stepped back, leaving the door open, and walked toward the living room without looking at me. "She is here," my mother announced to the room. Her voice was flat, trembling with a suppressed rage that she was clearly waiting to unleash. I stepped inside and closed the door behind me. The air in the house was warm and smelled of vanilla candles, a scent that used to comfort me but now just smelled cloying and cheap. They were all there. My father, Tom, was sitting in his leather recliner, his arms crossed over his chest, his face a mask of thunderous judgment. Taryn was on the sofa, curled up with her legs tucked under her. She was wearing a frantic expression that didn't quite reach her eyes, which were glued to her phone screen. Her thumbs were moving rapidly. She was texting someone, or deleting something. She didn't look up when I entered. I stood in the center of the room. I did not sit down. I kept my coat on. "You have a lot of nerve coming here," my mother said. Turning to face me, she stood by the fireplace, gripping the mantel as if she needed the support. "Do you have any idea what you have done? Do you have any idea the humiliation we have suffered today?" "I have a fairly clear idea," I said. My voice was quiet. It was the voice I used when I had to fire someone who was crying in my office. "I read the police report." "The police report," my father scoffed. He spat the words out like they were poison. "You called the police on your own flesh and blood, on your sister, on your parents. You had us treated like common criminals on the side of the road. The neighbors saw the squad car. Paisley. People drove by and saw us standing there like vagrants. If you did not want to be treated like criminals," I said, "you should not have committed a crime." "It was not a crime," my mother shouted, her voice finally cracking. "It was a misunderstanding. We borrowed the car. We are family. Since when do we need a contract to help each other out? Since when do you count miles and gas money with the people who gave you life?" "I said no," I said. I didn't raise my voice to match hers. I went lower. "On Friday, you asked. I said no. Taryn texted. I said no. That is not a misunderstanding. Mother, that is defiance. You took the keys from my house without my permission. That is burglary. You took the car across state lines. That is grand theft. The law does not have a family exception clause." Taryn let out a loud, theatrical sigh and threw her phone down on the cushion next to her. She looked at me with an expression that was a mix of boredom and pity. "You are so dramatic," Taryn said. "Honestly, Paisley, you are acting like we sold the car for parts. We just drove it. It is fine. It is sitting in the impound lot. Totally fine. You are making this huge scene because you like the power. You like seeing us beg." "The car is not fine," I said. "It is filthy. It is scratched. And it was impounded because you were too arrogant to park legally and too cheap to pay a $75 drop fee." "We were stressed," Taryn snapped. "The kids were crying. You try dealing with two exhausted children while a tow truck driver is yelling at you. But you wouldn't know about that, would you? You just sit in your quiet house with your nice things and judge everyone." "I am not judging you for having children, Taryn," I said. "I am judging you for using them as a shield for your own entitlement." My father stood up. He was a big man, and he used his size to intimidate. He walked over to where I was standing, invading my personal space. I did not flinch. I did not step back. I looked him in the eye. "Let's get something straight," he said, pointing a finger at my face. "That car? That house you live in? That fancy degree on your wall? You have those things because we sacrificed for you. We put you first. We went without so you could have lessons and tutors. That car is not just yours. Paisley, it is the return on our investment. It is the family's spiritual property. When we need it, we take it. That is the deal." "There is no deal," I said. "I paid my debts to you years ago. I have supported you. I have bailed you out. But I never signed a contract that said I forfeit my autonomy because you raised me. That car is titled in my name. I pay the insurance. I pay the note. It is not spiritual property. It is private property. You are ungrateful, my father said, shaking his head with disgust. You are cold and ungrateful. We raised a monster. Maybe you did, I said. But at least this monster pays her own bills. Taryn picked up her phone again. Whatever. Are you going to drop the charges or not? Because I have things to do tomorrow. I cannot be dealing with a court date just because you are having a tantrum. I am not dropping anything, I said. The room went silent. They had assumed that my presence here meant I was ready to negotiate. They thought I was here to exact an apology and then make the call to the district attorney. What did you say? My mother whispered. I said I am not dropping the charges, I repeated. The report is filed. The evidence is submitted. You will have to explain to a judge why you had my car. You are ruining my life, Taryn shrieked. She finally looked scared. I have plans. I have people I need to meet. If I have a record, how am I supposed to network? Network? I asked. I latched onto the word. It felt out of place. Taryn did not work. She had not held a job in 4 years. Who exactly are you networking with in Myrtle Beach? Taryn? Taryn froze. Her eyes darted to my mother, then back to her phone. Just people, moms, from the school district. It is important for the kids. It was a brunch, I said. I took a step toward the sofa. I found the receipt, $300 at the Ocean Club. Who takes 2 5-year-olds to a $300 brunch for networking? It was a crucial brunch, Taryn blurted out. It was with the admission committee for the prep school, the one in Charleston. I needed to show them I fit in. I needed them to see we are the right kind of family. The air in the room seemed to vanish. I looked at my parents. They didn't look surprised. They looked guilty. They knew. So, I said, my voice dropping to a whisper. You did not go to the beach for the kids to play in the sand. You went to a high-end resort area to pitch Taryn to a private school admissions board, and you took my car because... I let the sentence hang there. Because Taryn's car is a piece of junk, my father muttered. You cannot pull up to a meeting like that in a 10-year-old Honda. Appearance matters. Paisley, you know that better than anyone. We needed the Audi to look the part. You were using my car as a prop, I said. You were using my identity to commit fraud. You were presenting yourselves as people with resources you do not have. It is not fraud, Taryn cried. It is fake it until you make it. Everyone does it. I just wanted the kids to have a chance at a better school. Why do you hate your nephew so much that you would sabotage his education? Stop, I said. I held up a hand. Do not do that. Do not use the kids. My mother stepped forward, tears streaming down her face now. You are cruel. Those babies are innocent, and you are punishing them. You are punishing us all because you are jealous that Taryn has a family and you have nothing but a cold, empty house and a car. It was a low blow. It was the lowest blow she had in her arsenal. The accusation that my success was just a consolation prize for my lack of a husband and children. I looked at my mother. I looked at the woman who had taught me to tie my shoes, who had nursed me through chicken pox, and I realized that she did not see me. She only saw what I could provide. I do not hate the kids, I said. I love them. I love them enough to know that they deserve better than to be raised by people who think lying is a strategy and theft is a right. I looked at Taryn. You want to get them into a good school? Start by teaching them that actions have consequences. Because right now, you are teaching them that if they want something, they should just take it, and I will not let you use me to validate that lesson. Get out, my father growled. If you are not here to help, get out of my house. I am leaving, I said, but before I go, you need to know something. I reached into my purse. I didn't pull out a checkbook. I didn't pull out the keys. I pulled out a single piece of paper. It was a printout of the email confirming the termination of my authorized user status on their shared credit cards. I placed it on the coffee table. I am done, I said. I am done paying for the cell phones. I am done paying for the insurance. I am done covering the emergencies. And I am certainly done being the vehicle depot for your delusions of grandeur. You cannot do that, my mother said, her voice trembling. We have an agreement. We had a dynamic, I corrected, an abusive one, and it ended the moment you drove my car out of my garage. I turned to the door. Paisley, Taryn yelled after me. If you walk out that door, do not expect to see the kids again. I mean it. You are cut off. I stopped. My hand was on the doorknob. It hurt. It hurt more than the money, more than the car. I knew she meant it. She would weaponize access to the only family members I truly felt a pure connection with, but I also knew that if I turned back now, if I apologized, if I fixed it, I would be buying access to my nephew and niece with my dignity, and eventually, the price would get too high even for me. I did not turn around. From today on, I said to the door in front of me, I am no longer the backup plan for this family. Figure it out yourselves. I opened the door and walked out into the cool Ohio night. Behind me, I heard my mother start to scream. I heard my father shouting my name. I heard Taryn throwing something that shattered against the wall. I kept walking. I walked down the driveway, past the manicured lawn, and onto the sidewalk. My Uber was gone, so I walked toward the main road to call another one. My heart was pounding in a rhythm that felt like a war drum. I felt lighter, terrified. Yes, sad, absolutely. But lighter, I had dropped the weight. I had finally put down the burden of being the good daughter who fixes everything. The confrontation was over, but the war had just begun, and as I stood under the street lamp, waiting for my ride, I knew that my next move wouldn't be emotional. It would be forensic. The drive back from my parents' house was short, but the distance I had traveled psychologically was measured in light years. I walked into my home, locked the door, and engaged the deadbolt. Then I engaged the secondary slide lock. Then I set the alarm system to stay, meaning the perimeter was armed instantly. I did not go to the kitchen to pour a glass of wine. I did not go to the bathroom to wash my face. I went straight to my office, sat down in my ergonomic chair, and woke up my computer. The screens flared to life, casting a cool blue light across the room. It was the lighting of an operating theater. I opened the file I had named Read Family Audit. The confrontation in the living room had been the emotional severance. Now, I needed the administrative severance. For years, I had allowed my finances to become a root system that entangled with theirs, feeding them nutrients while they slowly choked me out. Tonight, I was pulling up the roots. I started with the low-hanging fruit, the subscriptions. I logged into my Amazon account. I went to the subscribe and save section. It was a scrolling list of dependency. Every month, on the 15th, a care package was automatically generated and shipped to Taryn's address. Pampers Swaddlers, size 5, 2 boxes, Honest Company organic baby wipes, 4 packs, gluten-free cheddar bunnies, 6 boxes, EcoS, hypoallergenic laundry detergent, 2 jugs. I looked at the total. It was nearly $300 a month. $300 that simply vanished from my account so that Taryn didn't have to worry about the basics. I had set this up 2 years ago when she was crying about the cost of diapers. Just for a few months, I had said. A few months had turned into 24. I moved my cursor to the Cancel Subscription button. A pop-up window appeared. Are you sure? If you cancel now, you will lose your 15% discount. I am saving 100%, I whispered to the empty room. I clicked confirm. I went down the list. Cancel, cancel, cancel. The dog food for the golden retriever they couldn't afford. The organic vitamins my mother swore were the only thing keeping her knees working. The streaming service bundle that allowed them to watch 4 screens at once while I paid the premium rate. By the time I finished the retail purge, I had freed up almost $600 a monthly cash flow. Then I moved to the service providers. I picked up my phone. It was 8:30 at night, so the offices were closed. But I knew the automated systems. I called the veterinary clinic where Taryn took her dog. I navigated the menu until I reached the billing section. I left a voicemail for the practice manager. "This is Paisley Reed. I am the holder of the Visa card, ending in 4091, currently on file for the account of Taryn Hughes. Effective immediately. I am revoking authorization for any future charges. Remove the card from the file. If any further charges are attempted, they will be disputed as fraud. I will follow up with a written confirmation tomorrow." I did the same for the pharmacy where my father picked up his blood pressure medication. I did the same for the lawn care service that mowed my parents' grass because my father claimed his back was too bad to push a mower. Despite being well enough to play 18 holes of golf every Saturday, then came the big one, the joint checking account. I had opened it with my father when I was 18, right before I went to college. It was supposed to be for emergencies. Over the years, it had become a zombie account, technically alive, but mostly used by him to move money around when he wanted to hide purchases from my mother, or to borrow a few $100s from me without having to ask. I logged into the bank portal. I stared at the balance. It should have had $2,000 in it. That was the buffer I always kept there. The balance was $42.16. I clicked on the transaction history. Withdrawal, $500. Saturday, withdrawal, $500. Sunday, withdrawal, $900. Monday morning. My father had drained the account while they were in Myrtle Beach. He knew I was angry. He knew the hammer was coming, so he had looted the safe before the building burned down. He had taken $1,900 out in cash from ATMs in South Carolina. I felt a cold flash of rage, but I pushed it down. It was the price of admission to my freedom. I transferred the remaining $42.16 to my personal savings account. Then I navigated to the service center and selected Close Account. The system warned me that closing a joint account would notify all account holders. "Good," I said. I clicked the button. Account closed. Somewhere in the suburbs, my father's phone would be buzzing with an alert from the bank. He would know that the tap had been turned off. The infinite liquidity of Paisley Reed was gone. But I wasn't done. The theft of the valet key had triggered a new, darker paranoia in me. If they knew where the key was, what else had they found? My social security card? My passport? My birth certificate? I went to the credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, TransUnion. I initiated a total credit freeze on my social security number. No one could open a credit card, take out a loan, or buy a car in my name without a PIN that only I possessed. Then I went to my email. I changed the password. It had been a variation of my childhood pet's name. I changed it to a random string of 24 alphanumeric characters generated by a security app. I enabled two-factor authentication on everything: bank accounts, investment portfolios, retirement funds, even my loyalty rewards programs. If they tried to log in, they would hit a steel wall. By midnight, I had hermetically sealed my digital life. I sat back in my chair, my neck stiff, my eyes burning. I sent one final email. It was to the attorney I had retained earlier that day, a sharp, aggressive litigator named Marcus Vance. Subject: Cease and desist. Property notice, Marcus. Per our discussion, please proceed with the formal letter to Thomas Reed, Lydia Reed, and Taryn Hughes. I want it explicitly stated that they are trespassers if they step foot on my property. I want it stated that any attempt to access my financial accounts will be treated as identity theft. And I want a demand for the return of any other keys, fobs, or access cards they might possess. Send it via courier. I want them to have to sign for it. I went to bed at 1 a.m. I slept for 4 hours. Tuesday and Wednesday passed in a blur of silence. It was the eye of the storm. I went to work. I focused on the merger. I was terrifyingly efficient. My boss complimented me on my focus, having no idea that my brain was currently operating in a survival mode that made corporate strategy look like child's play. Then, on Thursday, the silence broke. But it didn't break with a direct attack. It broke with a flanking maneuver. My phone rang at 7 p.m. It was my Aunt Beatrice, my father's older sister. Beatrice lived in Florida and usually only called on Christmas. Paisley? Her voice was shrill, vibrating with righteous indignation. Hello, Aunt Beatrice? I said, putting down my fork. I was eating a salad in my kitchen, standing up. I just got off the phone with your mother, she said. I am shaking, literally shaking. Is it true? Is what true, Beatrice? Did you really leave your sister and her babies on the side of the road in a strange state? Did you really have your own father treated like a criminal by the police? Lydia said the children are traumatized. She said you refused to help them get home unless they signed some sort of confession. The narrative had been spun. I could see it weaving itself together. In their version, I was the unstable, vindictive tyrant who had set a trap for a loving family trying to take a vacation. That is not what happened, I said calmly. Well, it certainly sounds like it, Beatrice snapped. Your father is humiliated. He said he has never been so disrespected in his life. He said you have been acting strange lately, paralyzed by greed. That is what he said. He said money has poisoned your soul. Did he mention he stole $1,900 from our joint account before I closed it? I asked. Beatrice paused. Well, I am sure he was just trying to secure funds for the emergency you caused. Paisley, you need to apologize. You need to drop this legal nonsense and pay for their legal fees. Those are your nieces and nephews. I am not doing that, Beatrice, I said. I suggest you ask Taryn about the $300 brunch she expensed to me while she was stranded. Good night. I hung up. I blocked her number. Then I opened Facebook. I hadn't been on it in years, but I still had an account. There it was, the campaign. My mother had posted a picture of a stormy sea with a quote in heavy cursive font. The saddest thing about betrayal is that it never comes from your enemies. It comes from those you nursed at your breast, praying for my family's healing during this dark time of persecution. It had 42 likes and 20 comments from her church friends saying things like, "Stay strong, Lydia," and "We are praying for the truth to come out." Taryn had been more direct. She had posted a photo of her children looking sad, likely because she had taken their iPads away to stage the photo. The caption read, "Holding these two tight tonight. It is scary when the people who are supposed to protect you turn out to be the monsters. Money really does change people. So grateful for the real ones who don't put a price tag on love." She hadn't named me. She didn't have to. The implication was clear. I was the rich, heartless sister who cared more about her Audi than her bloodline. I felt a surge of nausea, but I fought it. This was the distraction. This was the smoke bomb they threw to cover their retreat. They wanted me to engage. They wanted me to comment, to defend myself, to look messy and emotional so they could say, "See, she is crazy." I did not comment. I took screenshots. I captured every post. I captured the timestamps. I captured the comments where my father chimed in with, "We will survive this injustice." I saved them all to a new folder on my laptop. I was not going to fight them on Facebook. I was not going to fight them in the family rumor mill. I was going to fight them with facts. I opened Adobe Acrobat. I began to assemble the master file. I dragged in the police report from Myrtle Beach. I dragged in the impound invoice. I dragged in the towing receipt with the refuse to pay note. I dragged in the GPS logs showing the unauthorized route. I dragged in the EZ-Pass toll violations. I dragged in the bank statement showing the $1,900 withdrawal by my father. I dragged in the receipts from the Ocean Club and the VIP cabana rental. I dragged in the screenshots of the smear campaign. I dragged in the copy of the email regarding the credit card fraud. I dragged in the legal notice my lawyer had sent them. It was 50 pages long. It was a dossier of exploitation. It was a story told entirely in numbers, timestamps, and official letterheads. It was undeniable. It was unemotional. It was lethal. I looked at the file name prompt. I thought about calling it Evidence. I thought about calling it The Truth. But then I remembered how it started. I remembered the notification waking me up at 8:12 in the morning. I remembered the feeling of my week starting with a catastrophe they had engineered. I typed 6 letters. Monday. PDF. I hit save. I uploaded the file to a secure cloud drive. I generated a shareable link. I wasn't going to send it yet. I was going to wait. I was going to wait for them to push one step too far. I was going to wait for the moment when the poor family narrative was at its peak, when they felt safest in their lies. And then, I was going to drop the link, not just to them, but to the people they were trying to impress. I looked at the calendar. Next week was the family reunion on my mother's side, a massive gathering in a rented hall where appearances were everything. I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. It was the smile of a strategist who had just seen the checkmate 5 moves ahead. Monday is coming, I said to the quiet room. Saturday morning arrived with a silence that felt heavy, like the air before a tornado touches down. The house was quiet. The digital perimeter I had established around my life was holding. No new charges had appeared on my cards. No unauthorized logins had triggered my 2-factor authentication. My family was, for the moment, contained, but I could not rest. My mind was still itching, a persistent sense that I was missing a piece of the puzzle. I had the what, the theft, the joyride, the impound. I had the where, Myrtle Beach, the Ocean Club, but I did not fully understand the why. The family vacation excuse was obviously a lie, but the networking excuse Taryn had screamed at me still felt thin. You do not risk a felony just to eat brunch with strangers unless the stakes are incredibly high. I decided to channel my energy into the one task I had been avoiding, the deep clean. I went down to the garage, I pulled on a pair of thick rubber gloves, and grabbed a trash bag. The Audi was sitting there, the mud on the wheel wells drying into a crusty reddish clay. I opened the rear passenger door. The smell of stale apple juice and sunscreen was still there, faint but stubborn, burrowed into the upholstery. I began to dismantle the back seat. I pulled out the floor mats to scrub them. I reached into the crevices between the seat cushions, my fingers brushing against the hidden detritus of their trip. I pulled out a desiccated French fry, a hair clip that belonged to my niece, a plastic wrapper for a fruit snack. Then, my hand hit something stiff. It was shoved deep under the front passenger seat, pushed back so far that it must have been kicked there by someone sitting in the back, or perhaps hastily stuffed out of sight during a panic. I worked it loose and pulled it out. It was a crumpled ball of high-quality, glossy paper. Inside the ball, tangled in the folds, was a gold paper wristband with the words VIP Access printed in metallic lettering. I smoothed out the paper on the hood of the car. It was not a flyer for a dolphin tour or a mini golf course. It was a program. The Low Country Future Leaders Summit Brunch. Sunday, 10 o'clock in the morning. The Palmetto Ballroom. I read the text. This was not a fun family outing. It was an elite mixer for parents trying to get their children into a specific network of private preparatory schools and equestrian academies in the coastal region. The keynote speaker was a headmaster from a school where the annual tuition cost more than my first salary. I turned the program over. There was handwriting on the back. It was scrawled in blue ink, hasty and looping. Taryn, great meeting you and the kids. Leo has such potential for the junior academy. Let's discuss the sponsorship tier next week. Love the car. By the way, fits the vibe perfectly. It was signed, Julianne V. I stared at the note. Love the car. The phrase stuck in my throat like a fishbone. Love the car. Not love your sister's car. Not nice ride. But love the car. Addressed to Taryn. In a context that implied ownership. Taryn hadn't just used the car to get there. She had used the car as a costume. She had worn my Audi Q7 like a designer dress, wrapping herself in the metal and leather of my success to convince this woman, this Julianne, that she belonged in a world she could not afford. I went back inside the house and opened my laptop. I searched for Low Country Future Leaders Summit. The website was full of stock photos of smiling children in blazers and parents drinking mimosas on manicured lawns. I looked up the entry requirements. It wasn't just a ticketed event. You had to be nominated or show proof of community standing. I called a friend of mine, Elena, who worked in admissions consulting for high-net-worth families in Chicago. She answered on the second ring. Paisley? She asked. Everything okay? It is Saturday. I need you to decode something for me, I said, skipping the pleasantries. What is the Low Country Future Leaders Summit? Elena laughed, a sharp, cynical sound. Oh, it is a cattle call. Paisley, it is where the new money goes to beg the old money for spots in the feeder schools. Why? My sister was there last weekend, I said. With my car? Let me guess, Elena said. She was trying to get the kids into St. Jude's or the equestrian prep. Listen, those places are sharks. They don't just look at the kids' grades. They look at the parents' liquidity. They look at the zip code. If your sister showed up there, she was trying to prove she had assets. The car was her prop. If you show up in a 10-year-old sedan, they hand you a brochure and show you the door. If you show up in a shiny new German SUV, they invite you to the VIP brunch. She was trying to fake her way in, I said, the realization settling cold in my stomach. It is worse than that, Elena said. If she was talking to Julianne, probably Julianne Vance, the queen bee of that circuit, she wasn't just faking it. She was probably pledging money she doesn't have. They pressure you to commit to donations on the spot to secure an interview slot. I thanked Elena and hung up. So that was it. Taryn wanted to be a part of the elite mom squad. She wanted the validation of sending her kids to a future leaders school, and since she couldn't afford the lifestyle, she stole mine for 48 hours to audition for the role. It was pathetic. It was infuriating. But it was, in a twisted way, understandable. Taryn had always been desperate for status. But then, the second shoe dropped. My email pinged. It was a notification from a service I subscribed to called Identity Guard. I had set it up years ago after a data breach at a retailer. And mostly, I ignored the weekly, "You are safe" emails. This one was different. The subject line was red. Urgent. New inquiry on your asset record. I clicked it. My heart rate spiking. We have detected a request to verify the title status of a vehicle registered to your Social Security number. Inquiry source: Coastal Cash Title. Lending. LLC. Date: Monday, 9:15 in the morning. I stopped breathing. Coastal Cash Title Lending. That wasn't a bank. That wasn't a school. That was a predatory lender. That was a place where you went when you were desperate, where you handed over the title to your car in exchange for a quick cash loan at 300% interest. Why would a title lender be checking my car? I logged into the Identity Guard portal. I drilled down into the inquiry details. There was a note attached to the file request. Status: denied. Name on title: Paisley Reed. Does not match applicant: Taryn Hughes. Applicant provided. Letter of authorization, but signature was flagged as irregular. I felt the blood drain from my face. They hadn't just driven the car to the brunch. On Monday morning, while I was sitting in Portland staring at the impound notice, Taryn had driven my car to a title loan strip mall. She had walked in there with a forged letter, a letter claiming I had authorized her to use the vehicle as collateral, and tried to take out a loan against my $70,000 SUV. Why? The brunch, the sponsorship tier mentioned on the note. Elena had said they pressure you to commit to donations on the spot. Taryn must have promised Julianne money, maybe $5,000, maybe $10,000, to secure her spot. She didn't have the money, so she tried to liquidate a piece of my car to pay for her lie. If the title lender hadn't been diligent, or if Taryn had been a better forger, they could have placed a lien on my car. I could have come home to find out that my vehicle was technically owned by a strip mall loan shark in South Carolina. I sat back in my chair, the room spinning slightly. This wasn't just a family drama anymore. It wasn't just a sister borrowing a sweater without asking. This was a criminal enterprise. I pieced the timeline together. Saturday. They drive down, burning my gas, using my toll pass. Sunday. The brunch. Taryn plays the rich mom. She drives my clean, shiny car up to the valet. She charms Julianne. She gets high on the validation. She promises a big donation to get Leo into the academy. Sunday night. She realizes she has to pay up or lose the status she just tasted. She panics. Monday morning. She tries to pawn the title of my car to get the cash, The loan is denied because the forgery is bad. Monday, late morning. They park the car illegally because they are arguing, panicking. The car gets towed. Monday afternoon. Taryn tries to steal the car back from the impound lot because she is terrified I will find the rejection letter from the loan place in the car, or because she thinks she can try another lender if she just gets to the next town. They were willing to leverage my financial future to buy a ticket to a social club. They were willing to risk my credit, my property, and my legal standing just so Taryn could pretend to be someone she wasn't. I looked at the crumpled program on my desk. I looked at the VIP wristband. For the last 5 days, I had been feeling a mix of anger and grief. I grieved the relationship I thought I had. I grieved the idea that my parents loved me, even if they were flawed. But looking at that title inquiry, the grief evaporated. It was replaced by a cold, hard resolve. They had tried to sell me. They had tried to sell pieces of my life to buy a costume for theirs. I opened the Monday PDF file again. It wasn't enough. The timeline, the receipts, the toll logs. That was just the story of an unauthorized trip. I needed to add the felony fraud. I took a screenshot of the title inquiry. I took a picture of the forged authorization note that the credit monitoring service had thankfully attached as a reason for denial. I zoomed in on the signature. It looked like my name, but the loop on the P was wrong. It was Taryn's handwriting trying to be mine. I added it to the file. Page 51. Attempted title fraud. Forgery. I saved the document. I closed my laptop. I didn't slam it. I closed it gently. I was done screaming. I was done explaining. I was done asking for apologies. You do not argue with people who try to pawn your car behind your back. You do not try to reason with people who forge your signature. You neutralize them. I picked up my phone and dialed Marcus Vance, my attorney. It was Saturday, and I knew his rates for weekend calls were exorbitant. I didn't care. "Marcus," I said when he answered. "Paisley, is there an emergency?" "No," I said. "There is a change in strategy." "Go on." "I want to move beyond the cease and desist," I said. "I want to file a formal complaint for identity theft and attempted fraud. I have documentation that Taryn Hughes attempted to secure a loan using my vehicle as collateral with a forged signature." Marcus let out a low whistle. "Okay, that is serious. That is prison time. Paisley, are you sure? This is your sister." "She is not my sister right now," I said, looking at the gold VIP wristband on my desk. "She is a liability, and I am mitigating my risk. We will need to file a police report specifically for the fraud in Ohio, since that is where you reside, and link it to the activity in South Carolina," Marcus said, his voice shifting into professional gear. "It is going to be a war." "It is already a war, Marcus," I said. "I just realized I was the only one not shooting back." "I will draft the affidavits," he said. "We can file Monday morning." "Monday?" I said. "Perfect." I disconnected. I stood up and walked to the window. Outside, the wind was picking up, rattling the bare branches of the trees. I thought about Taryn. I thought about her desperation to be seen, to be admired, to be VIP. She wanted to be a leader? She wanted to be elite? Fine. I would give her a title. Defendant. I turned away from the window and went back to the garage. I had one more thing to do. I picked up the VIP wristband and the glossy program. I didn't throw them away. I put them in a clear plastic evidence bag I had bought at the office supply store. I labeled it Exhibit B. Then I turned off the garage lights, leaving the Audi in the dark. It was clean now. The smell was gone. The mud was gone. But the stain of what they had done? That was permanent. And come Monday, the whole world was going to see it. Monday morning arrived with the sterile, fluorescent precision that I usually found comforting. I was sitting at my desk on the 14th floor of the Caldwell Meridian Strategies building downtown. The view from my window was a panorama of steel and glass, a world of commerce where rules were followed and contracts were binding. It was the antithesis of the chaotic, muddy reality I had been living in since the weekend. I was reviewing the final merge documents for the acquisition I had successfully pitched in Portland. My mind was sharp. The emotional fog that usually clouded my judgment when it came to my family had lifted, replaced by the cold clarity of a prosecutor preparing a closing argument. At 10:15 in the morning, my desk phone chimed. It was the receptionist from the main lobby downstairs. "Ms. Reed?" she said, her voice hesitant. "There is a woman here to see you, a Taryn Hughes. She says she is your sister. She does not have an appointment, but she says it is a family emergency." I paused. My hand hovered over the mouse. I had expected a text. I had expected a call. I had not expected a frontal assault at my place of business. "Is she causing a scene?" I asked calmly. "No," the receptionist said, "but she seems distressed. She is pacing." "I will come down," I said. "Do not let her pass the security turnstiles." I hung up. I opened my briefcase. I took out the thick manila envelope that I had prepared the night before. It contained the document I had named Monday. PDF, printed on heavy bond paper. I smoothed my skirt, adjusted my blazer, and walked to the elevator. When the doors slid open in the lobby, I saw her. Taryn was wearing a beige trench coat that I recognized because I had bought it for myself 3 years ago, and it had mysteriously vanished during a Thanksgiving visit. She was wearing oversized sunglasses, even though it was overcast outside. She was clutching her designer handbag, a knockoff I knew she bought on Canal Street, like a life preserver. She looked frantic. She looked like a woman who was watching her house of cards catch fire and was trying to blow out the flames with her breath. I walked toward the security desk. Taryn saw me and rushed forward, stopping just short of the glass barrier. "Paisley," she breathed, pulling off her sunglasses. Her eyes were red-rimmed, but she had applied fresh concealer. "Thank God. You have to help me. Please, I know you are mad. I know I messed up. But this is different." I stood on the other side of the turnstile. I did not swipe my badge to let her in. I stood there like a guard at a border crossing. "You have 5 minutes," I said. "I have a meeting." "I need the car," Taryn whispered, leaning in close so the security guard wouldn't hear. "Just for 2 hours. That is it. I swear on my life. Paisley, just 2 hours." I stared at her. "The car that is currently sitting in my garage with a scratched door and a biohazard interior? You need that car?" "I cleaned it," she lied. She didn't know I had already seen it. "Look, it is not about the car. It is about appearances. I have a meeting at 11 with Julianne, the woman from the summit. She is in town. She wants to finalize the sponsorship paperwork for Leo. If I do not show up, or if I show up in my Honda, she will know. She will know everything was a lie. So you want to use my car to continue the fraud," I said. "You want to drive my $70,000 SUV to a meeting to convince a stranger that you have money you do not have, so you can sign a contract for a school tuition you cannot afford." "It is for Leo," Taryn hissed, her voice rising. "He needs this opportunity. Why are you being so cruel? I am trying to build a future for him. If I drive that car, she believes me. If she believes me, he gets in. Once he is in, I will figure out the money. I always figure it out." I looked at my sister. I really looked at her. For years, I had thought she was just immature. I thought she was just bad with details. But standing there in the lobby of Caldwell Meridian Strategies, surrounded by people who worked for everything they had, I saw the truth. She was an addict. She wasn't addicted to drugs or alcohol. She was addicted to an image. She was addicted to the feeling of being special, of being elite, of being VIP, and she was willing to cannibalize anyone, her parents, her sister, her children, to feed that addiction. She didn't want the car to drive. She wanted the car to wear. It was a costume. "You really think this will work?" I asked softly. "You think if you just drive the Audi one more time, everything will be fixed?" Taryn nodded vigorously, hope flooding her face. Yes, exactly. Just one more time. Paisley, be the big sister. Save me this one last time, and I promise I will never ask for anything again." I looked down at the envelope in my hand. "Okay," I said. Taryn let out a sob of relief. She reached out her hand over the turnstile. Thank you. Oh my God. Thank you. You are the best. I knew you would understand. Where are the keys? Are they in the envelope? I handed her the heavy manila envelope. Take this, I said. Taryn grabbed it. She looked at the thickness of it. She frowned slightly. The keys are inside? Open it, I said. She tore open the clasp. She reached inside, expecting the heavy, cool weight of the Audi fob. Instead, her fingers brushed against paper. She pulled out the stack. The first page was the impound receipt from Myrtle Beach, blown up to show the refuse to pay notation. The second page was the GPS map showing her unauthorized route across 3 state lines. The third page was the screenshot of the denied credit inquiry from the predatory title loan company, with the forgery detected stamp clearly visible. The fourth page was a letter from Marcus Vance, my attorney, formally notifying her that any further use of my identity or property would result in immediate criminal prosecution. Taryn froze. She stared at the papers. Her hands started to shake. The color drained from her face, leaving the concealer standing out like yellow chalk on a blackboard. What is this? She whispered. That is the audit, I said. That is the receipts. Taryn, all of them. I don't understand, she stammered, flipping through the pages. Where are the keys? I have to go. I'm going to be late. There are no keys, I said. There never will be again. I leaned closer to the glass. Here is the deal. You have a meeting with Julianne at 11? Good. You are going to go to that meeting. You are going to go in your Honda, and you are going to tell her the truth. You are going to tell her that you are not a wealthy philanthropist. You are going to tell her that you cannot afford the sponsorship tier. You are going to withdraw your application. I can't do that, Taryn shrieked. People in the lobby turned to look. She will laugh at me. She will tell everyone. If you do not, I continued, my voice cutting through her panic like a razor wire, then I am going to mail a copy of that packet to Julianne myself, and then I am going to mail a copy to the admissions board of the school. And then I am going to walk it over to the police station and file a formal affidavit for the attempted title fraud you committed on Monday morning. Taryn looked at me with horror. You wouldn't... That is blackmail. No, I said. Blackmail is asking for something you do not own. This is leverage. You have spent your whole life relying on the fact that I would never embarrass you. You banked on my silence. You bet my dignity against your lies. Well, the casino is closed. Taryn, you are a monster, she shouted. The tears were real now, but they were tears of rage, not sorrow. You are jealous because I have a life. You are jealous because I am trying to better myself. You want me to stay poor. You want me to fail? I want you to stop stealing from me, I said. I want you to stop using my name to commit felonies. It is a very low bar, Taryn, and you are tripping over it. Mom and Dad will never forgive you for this. She screamed, throwing the papers on the floor of the lobby. They will hate you. They can join the queue, I said. Pick up the papers. Taryn, do not litter in my building. She looked at the papers scattered on the polished marble. She looked at the security guard who was now stepping out from behind the desk, his hand on his radio. She scrambled down. Snatching up the evidence of her crimes, she stuffed them back into the envelope, crumpling them in her haste. I hate you, she hissed, standing up. I hate you so much. Go to the meeting, I said. Take the Honda. Drive safe. I turned my back on her. I walked toward the elevators. I did not look back. I heard the revolving door spin. I heard the silence return to the lobby. I rode the elevator up to the 14th floor. My heart was pounding, but it was a steady, rhythmic thumping. It wasn't the erratic flutter of panic. It was the heavy beat of a door slamming shut. I walked back to my desk. I sat down. My cell phone, which I had left face down on the desk, began to vibrate. It vibrated for 10 seconds. Then it stopped. Then it started again immediately. I looked at the screen. Dad, then Mom, then Dad again, then a text from my mother. How dare you? Taryn just called me sobbing. She can't breathe. You threatened to send her to jail? What is wrong with you? She is your sister. You are destroying this family over a stupid car. Fix this now, or do not bother coming to the reunion." I read the text. I felt a phantom twinge of the old guilt. The conditioning ran deep. The voice in my head said, "Maybe you went too far. Maybe you should just let her have the car one last time. Is it worth losing them?" Then I looked at the empty space on my desk where the envelope had been. I thought about the forged signature on the title loan application. I thought about my credit score, which I had protected for 15 years, almost being torpedoed because Taryn wanted to impress a stranger named Julianne. They didn't care about me. They didn't care about my career, my reputation, or my safety. They only cared that the resource they had been mining was finally fighting back. I picked up the phone. I did not answer the call. I opened my email app. I composed a new message. To Taryn Hughes, Thomas Reed, Lydia Reed. Subject: Communication Policy. I typed one sentence. It was not an apology. It was not an explanation. It was a procedural change. From now on, I only respond in writing. I hit send. Then I put the phone on Do Not Disturb. I turned back to the merger documents on my screen. I had a job to do. I had a life to build. And for the first time in 36 years, I was building it for myself, without a demolition crew waiting in the wings. The legal door was open. The emotional door was welded shut. And I had never felt safer. The collapse of Taryn's carefully constructed house of cards did not happen with a bang, but with a series of frantic, suffocating whispers. After I turned her away from the lobby of my office building, forcing her to confront her VIP meeting in her rusted Honda Civic, the illusion she had been selling began to dissolve. I learned later, through the grapevine of the very small, very chatty circle of elite school admissions, that Taryn had arrived at the meeting 40 minutes late. She was flustered, disheveled, and without the German SUV that she had claimed was her daily driver. When Julianne asked about the sponsorship tier, the $5,000 commitment Taryn had promised to secure her son's spot, Taryn had mumbled something about a bank error and liquidity issues in that world. Liquidity issues is a polite code for "you do not belong here." The application was placed on indefinite hold. The invitation to the next brunch was rescinded. Taryn had risked a felony for a seat at a table where the chair was pulled out from under her the moment she sat down. But the final blow, the twist that turned this from a messy family dispute into a closed legal case, landed on my desk on Wednesday afternoon. It was an envelope from the admissions office of the academy itself. I had not contacted them, but apparently, their diligence process was thorough. Inside was a photocopy of a financial guarantor agreement that had been submitted electronically on Monday morning, likely from Taryn's phone while she was panicked in the impound lot. I stared at the document. There, at the bottom of the page, was a signature, Paisley A. Reed. It was a clumsy attempt. The slant was wrong. The pressure was too heavy. But the intent was undeniable. Taryn had tried to sign me up as the financial guarantor for 12 years of private school tuition. She wasn't just stealing my car. She was attempting to steal my future cash flow. That was the moment the last thread of hesitation snapped. I picked up the phone and called Marcus Vance. "File it," I said. "File the identity theft report. File the unauthorized use of a motor vehicle report, and add a civil suit for the damages and the impound fees." "You are sure?" Marcus asked. "Once we file the identity theft charge regarding the guarantor form, the fraud unit gets involved. This becomes a state matter." "She forged my signature to sign me up for a $200,000 liability," I said, my voice steady. "I am sure." The legal machinery roared to life. By Friday, Taryn had been served with a court summons. My parents had received a certified letter demanding repayment of the $2,482.50 for the impound retrieval, plus the cost of the detailer. The reaction was immediate. They called for a family emergency meeting. It was scheduled for Sunday afternoon at my Aunt Beatrice's house. This was a strategic choice. They knew I wouldn't come to my parents' house, and they knew I wouldn't let them into mine. Beatrice was the neutral ground, the judge in the court of family opinion. I arrived at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. I parked my rental car on the street. My Audi was currently at a specialist detailer being scrubbed of its trauma. I walked into the living room. It was a full house. My parents were there, looking like martyrs. Taryn was sitting in the corner, holding a tissue, looking pale and tragic. Aunt Beatrice, Uncle Dave, and two of my older cousins were arranged on the sofas like a jury. "Sit down, Paisley," Aunt Beatrice said, her voice stern. "We need to get to the bottom of this nastiness. There is no mystery. Beatrice," my father started, jumping up before I could even take off my coat. "Paisley has lost her mind. She is suing her own sister. She is dragging our name through the mud over a car. A car! She has plenty of money, but she is trying to bankrupt Taryn out of spite. She left Taryn stranded in South Carolina," my mother added, sobbing. "She left those babies with strangers. She is cold. She is heartless." The room looked at me. I could see the judgment in my cousins' eyes. They had heard the story. The rich, mean sister bullying the struggling single mom. I did not sit down. I did not shout. I simply walked to the coffee table and placed my laptop down. I connected it to the large television screen on the wall via an HDMI cable I had brought with me. "I am not here to argue," I said. "I am here to present the audit." I opened the file. Monday, PDF. "You have all heard that I am petty," I said, facing the room. "You have heard that I am greedy. Now, let us look at the data." I clicked the first slide. It was the text message thread from the Friday before the trip. "Paisley, no, my car stays in the garage. Paisley, if anyone touches that car, I will report it." I said no, I stated clearly. 3 times. There was no confusion. There was no permission. I clicked the next slide. The security camera footage from my garage. The timestamp showed Saturday morning, 4 o'clock. It showed my father using a screwdriver to pop the lock on my interior door. It showed Taryn laughing as she reversed the Audi out. The room went quiet. Breaking into a house looks very different on video than it sounds in a story. I clicked again. The GPS map. The red line bleeding down to Myrtle Beach. The timestamps showing the speed. 90 miles per hour in a 65 zone. "This was not a safe family trip," I said. "This was a joyride." I clicked again. The receipts. The $300 brunch. The VIP cabana. The valet parking. "Taryn told you she was broke," I said to Aunt Beatrice. "She told you she needed money for gas. This is where that money went, to lobster tails and champagne at the Ocean Club." Taryn made a noise like a wounded animal, but I did not look at her. I clicked to the next slide. The title loan inquiry. The denied possible fraud stamp. "This is the moment Taryn tried to sell the title of my car to a predatory lender," I said. "She tried to pawn a $70,000 vehicle that she did not own." Aunt Beatrice gasped. Uncle Dave sat up straighter, his eyes narrowing. Attempting to pawn a family member's car is a line that even the most enabling families struggle to justify. Then, the final slide. The school guarantor form with the forged signature. "And this," I said, pointing to the screen, "is a felony. Taryn tried to sign my name to a contract that would have cost me thousands of dollars a year. This is not borrowing. This is identity theft." I closed the laptop. The screen went black. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the silence of a narrative being violently rewritten. My parents looked small. Taryn looked away. My cousins looked down at their hands. "I have filed the reports," I said into the silence. "The police have this evidence. The civil court has this evidence. This is not a negotiation." "But the kids," my mother whispered. It was her last card, the only card she had left. "Paisley, think of the kids. If you sue Taryn, if she has a record, it will ruin their lives. You are punishing innocent children." I looked at my mother. For the first time, I saw her not as a matriarch, but as a woman who had spent her life enabling mediocrity and calling it love. "I have thought about the kids," I said. "I have thought about them more than you have. You use them as props for a brunch. You use them as shields for a crime." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. "This is a copy of a trust structure I established yesterday," I said. "I am depositing $10,000 into a restricted account for my niece and nephew. It is for their education, their medical needs, and their clothing." My mother's eyes lit up. Taryn looked up, hopeful. "However," I continued, my voice hard as iron, "not a single cent of this money can be accessed by Taryn, or by you, Mom, or by you, Dad. It is administered by a third-party trustee. The bills are paid directly to the providers. If Taryn needs diapers, the trustee buys diapers and ships them. If the kids need shoes, the trustee pays the store. No cash ever touches Taryn's hands." Taryn's face fell. She realized what this meant. She could no longer use the children's needs to siphon cash from me for her own lifestyle. The well was capped. "I love those kids," I said. "That is why I am ensuring their resources actually go to them, instead of to VIP wristbands and valet parking." I picked up my laptop. I wrapped the cord. "This is the new reality," I said. "I am not the bank. I am not the doormat. I am the aunt who provides structure because their mother provides chaos." "You are cold," my father muttered. But there was no heat in it. He was defeated. He knew the evidence was insurmountable. "I am an adult," I corrected, "and it is time everyone else in this room became one too." I walked out of Aunt Beatrice's house. No one followed me. No one screamed. The weight of the evidence pinned them to their seats. The next week was a blur of administrative closure. Taryn's VIP life evaporated. With the legal pressure mounting, she was forced to admit the truth to her social circle. The sponsorship was canceled. The networking group ghosted her. She was back to being Taryn, without the costume of my success to hide behind. She ended up pleading no contest to a misdemeanor charge of unauthorized use in exchange for the fraud charges being dropped, provided she pay full restitution. She was on probation, and for the first time in her life, she had a payment plan that I wasn't covering. My parents were quiet. The internal trial at Aunt Beatrice's had backfired. The extended family now knew the truth, that they had enabled a theft. The shame kept them silent. They stopped calling me to demand things. They started calling, tentatively, just to talk. I answered, sometimes, but the dynamic had shifted. I held the power now. And then, there was the car. I picked up the Audi on a Friday evening, almost 2 weeks after the nightmare began. The detailer met me at the front. "We did the ozone treatment 3 times, he said. "We replaced the rear floor mats entirely. We buffed out the scratch on the door. We repainted the bumper. It is better than new." I paid the bill, another number for the restitution spreadsheet, and walked out to the car. It was gleaming under the parking lot lights. It looked sharp, aggressive, and pristine. I opened the door. I hesitated for a second, afraid the smell of stale juice and betrayal would still be there. I took a breath. It smelled of leather. It smelled of conditioner. It smelled of clean, cold air. I sat in the driver's seat. I adjusted the mirrors. I put my hands on the steering wheel. It wasn't sticky. It was smooth, cool, and responsive. I started the engine. The dashboard lit up, crisp and digital. The fuel tank was full. The GPS history had been wiped clean. I pulled out onto the highway. The sun was setting, casting a golden glow over the Ohio landscape. I merged into the fast lane. The car surged forward, powerful and obedient. For years, I had driven this car with a passenger in the back seat of my mind. The guilt, the obligation, the voice of my father telling me I owed them, the voice of my mother telling me to share. But as I accelerated, watching the city fade in the rearview mirror, I realized the passenger seat was empty. The car was mine. The title was safe. The money in my bank account was locked down. I turned off the radio. I didn't need music. I just wanted to hear the hum of the engine and the sound of the tires on the pavement. It was the sound of a life that had been reclaimed. Audit by audit, receipt by receipt. I was alone in the car, but I wasn't lonely. I was free. And as I drove into the twilight, I knew that no one would ever take the wheel from me again. Thank you so much for listening to this story about boundaries, betrayal, and the ultimate receipt drop. I would love to know where you are tuning in from today. Are you listening from your car, your office, or maybe while doing your own audit of life? Please let me know in the comments below so we can share our thoughts. If you enjoyed seeing Paisley take back control, please make sure to subscribe to the Helena Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach more people who might need a little inspiration to stand their ground. Stay strong and keep your keys safe.